He was already asleep when Cale Draven walked in. Not peacefully, not comfortably, collapsed against the wooden pew like something had finally snapped inside him. Blue scrubs wrinkled, hospital badge twisted sideways, one shoe half off his foot. The kind of sleep that doesn't come from rest, it comes from surrender. Cale stopped at the chapel door. He had 3 armed men behind him, a meeting in 40 minutes, and 0 reason to slow down. He slowed down. Something about the way that Nurse was curled against that pew. Shoulders caved inward, hands tucked under his chin, made Cale's chest do something unexpected. He stepped inside, sat down, 1 pew back, quiet. His security exchanged glances. Nobody spoke. For 41 minutes, Cale Draven, the man Aurora Harbor's entire criminal infrastructure answered to, sat in silence watching a stranger sleep. When the nurse finally stirred, his eyes flew open. Brown. Startled. Then the recognition hit. Everyone in Aurora Harbor knew that face. The jaw. The tattoos crawling up the neck. The stillness that made people feel like prey. The nurse shot upright so fast he nearly knocked the Bible off the pew. Cale didn't move, just looked at him, then said quietly, "You look more exhausted than anyone I've ever seen." Hi viewers. Have you ever been so tired that a stranger's silence felt safer than going home? The nurse opened his mouth, closed it. Cale was already standing, already walking toward the door, and the nurse, hands shaking, heart hammering, realized something that made absolutely no sense. The most dangerous man in the city had just sat beside him for nearly an hour, and never touched him once. Why? The badge read, Emeka Osei, RN, Pediatric ICU. Emeka had worn that badge for 3 years, had bled for it honestly, double shifts, missed meals. Phone calls he never returned because he was already running down another hallway with someone else's emergency in his hands. He was 26. He looked 40. His patient was 9 years old and hadn't spoken in 11 days. Rowan Ashford arrived after a crash on Route 9 that investigators called unsurvivable. Rowan survived. His parents didn't. The boy came in with 3 broken ribs, a collapsed lung, and eyes that looked like windows with the lights cut off. Emeka sat with him every break. Didn't push, didn't perform, just sat. By day 4, Rowan let him change the 4 without flinching. By day 7, he accepted food from Emeka's hands specifically. Not the tray, not the other nurses. Only Emeka. Terrified Emeka in a way he couldn't explain. Because Rowan looked at him like he was permanent. And Emeka knew better than anyone. Nothing in this hospital was permanent. Then Cale Draven showed up on the 4th floor. No appointment. No explanation. Just appeared in the hallway like the building had simply decided to let him in. 3 men behind him. Dark clothing. Jaw locked. Hospital administrators materialized from nowhere, practically tripping over themselves. Everyone else pressed against the walls. Rowan's door was open. The boy looked up and smiled. Not a polite smile, a real one. The kind Emeka had spent 11 days trying to earn. Emeka froze in the doorway. Cale's eyes moved from Rowan to him. Then Rowan reached under his pillow and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Extended it toward Emeka. His first words in 11 days were barely a whisper. "I made this for my family." The drawing was crayon on printer paper. 3 figures. Stick arms. Uneven heads. The kind of art that belonged on a refrigerator door. But Emeka stood in the supply closet staring at it like it was a crime scene. Left figure a boy. Small. Bandaged arm. Written underneath in careful child's handwriting. Rowan. Right figure tall. Dark. Sunglasses drawn in heavy black. Written underneath Mr. K. middle figure, blue shirt, hospital badge, written underneath Emmy, and below all three, underlined twice. My family. Emeka pressed his back against the shelf. He laughed. Nervous. Quiet. The kind of laugh that covers something heavier. It was a child's drawing. That was all. A traumatized kid attaching to the two adults who hadn't run from him yet. Simple. Explainable. Except Rowan had never seen Cale Draven before that hallway moment. Emeka was certain of it. So how had the boy known his name? He folded the drawing, tucked it into his chest pocket, told himself it didn't matter. It mattered. Back on the floor, things felt different. The kind of different you sense before you can name it. 2 hospital administrators had canceled afternoon rounds without explanation. A hallway near the east wing was blocked with a maintenance sign that appeared overnight. 3 people Emeka didn't recognize moved through the building carrying lanyards that looked slightly wrong. The color, the logo, off by just enough. He noticed, kept moving. At the end of his shift, passing the administrative suite, he heard voices through the door. Low, urgent. One phrase cut through clearly. The boy can't stay here much longer. Emeka stopped breathing. His hand was flat against the corridor wall. And then a second voice, colder. Then handle it before Thursday. Emeka moved, fast, quiet, away from that door before his brain caught up with his legs. He made it to the stairwell, stood there, hands pressed to his knees. Handle it. 2 words, that's all. Could mean a transfer, a discharge, a social worker filing paperwork. Hospitals said things like that all the time. He knew it wasn't paperwork. His access card stopped working on the east corridor by 7 p.m. Error message. He tried twice. Same result. He went to charge nurses. Got a tight smile. IT issue. Should be fixed tomorrow. It wasn't fixed tomorrow. By morning, 3 more areas were restricted. The pediatric records room, the administrative archive wing, and the door closest to Rowan's room. Emeka started writing things down. Dates, times, badge numbers on people he didn't recognize. He was careful. Not careful enough. He was charting near the nurse's station when a hand landed on his shoulder. Heavy, deliberate. And a security officer he'd never seen before said, very politely, that Dr. Hargrove wanted a word. Dr. Hargrove asked him, pleasantly, whether he'd been experiencing stress, whether he'd been sleeping, whether he might benefit from taking a few personal days. Emeka smiled, said he was fine, walked out of that office and straight into Cale Draven. Not figuratively, physically, chest to chest in the 4th floor corridor. Cale caught him by the arm before he could stumble back. Didn't let go immediately. Looked at him, really looked and said low, barely above a whisper, stop digging, unless you're ready to know the truth. Before Emeka could respond, an alarm. Rowan's room. He ran. The bed was empty. Monitors disconnected. Window shade moving in air that shouldn't have been moving. Rowan was gone. Lockdown hit the building like a fist. Doors sealed. Elevators stopped. PA system cutting in and out with instructions nobody could fully hear. Police came in waves, first 2 units, then 6, then a white unmarked van Emeka didn't recognize. Reporters gathered at the entrance before most of the staff even understood what happened. Child missing from Aurora Harbor Medical Center. 9-year-old orphan. No witnesses. Emeka stood in Rowan's empty room and could not move. The crayon drawing was still in his chest pocket. He could feel it. He had promised that boy nothing. Not out loud. But in the way you promise someone when you keep showing up, when you sit with them through silence, when you let them call you family on a piece of paper. He had promised. And Rowan was gone. An administrator. Not Dr. Hargrove, someone new, someone Emeka had never seen before last week. Approached him gently. Asked if Rowan had said anything unusual lately. Whether Emeka had noticed behavioral changes. Whether Emeka had perhaps allowed visitors outside of approved hours. The suggestion landed slow, then fast. They were pointing at him. Not directly, but the angle was clear. Emeka left the floor before he said something that would get him removed from the building entirely. He ended up in the chapel. Again. Same pew. He wasn't sleeping this time. He was breaking. He didn't hear the door open. Didn't hear footsteps. Just suddenly warmth beside him. Kale. No security. No entourage. Just him. Emeka didn't look up. His voice came out cracked and small. They took him. Kale was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. I know. You know? Rowan's parents weren't in that accident by chance. Kale's voice didn't waver. They were collecting evidence. And the people who killed them believe that boy knows where it's hidden. The chapel felt like it dropped 10 degrees. Emeka finally looked at him. What kind of evidence? Kale met his eyes. And the answer on his face was worse than anything Emeka had prepared himself for. Kale didn't answer with words right away. He stood up, walked to the chapel window, hands in his pockets, back to Emeka, the stained glass threw colored light across his shoulders. Red, blue, gold. And for a moment he looked less like the man Aurora Harbor feared, and more like someone carrying something he'd never set down. 12 years ago, Kale said. My younger brother Darius went missing. Emeka didn't move. He was 17, picked up off the street. They told us it was gang-related. Case went cold in 4 months. Kale's jaw tightened. It wasn't gang-related. He turned around. It was the same network that killed Rowan's parents. They've been operating inside legitimate institutions for over a decade. Hospitals, law firms, city contracts. The Ashfords, Rowan's parents, they were forensic accountants. They found the money trail. Pause. And they documented everything before the accident that wasn't an accident. Emeka pressed his hand flat over his chest pocket. Over the drawing. Rowan doesn't know where the evidence is, Emeka said slowly. He's 9. They don't know that. The weight of that landed hard. Emeka stood up. Then we find him first. Kale looked at him like he'd just said something reckless. Which he had. You don't know what you're walking into. I know what I'm walking away from if I don't. Emeka's voice didn't shake. That boy called me family. I'm not sitting in a chapel while someone has him. Long silence. Kale studied him. The way you study something you weren't expecting. Then, almost against his own judgment, he nodded. One small, deliberate nod. And his phone buzzed. An anonymous message. For words and a set of coordinates. He's not far yet. The first location was a warehouse off Meridian Road. Empty. Not abandoned, recently emptied. Folding chair still warm. Fast food bag less than 2 hours old. They were close. And someone knew they were coming. The second lead took them to a storage facility on the east side. Wrong building, right address. The unit number had been switched on the registry sometime in the last 6 hours. Deliberate. Kale moved through it without breaking stride, but Emeka caught the tension in his shoulders. The way his eyes tracked every corner twice. Someone was feeding them directions, and adjusting those directions in real time. On the drive to the third location, Emeka noticed Kale take a call he didn't put on speaker. Short. Clipped. I heard you. Don't move until I say. Then silence. A man named Brennan Cole had been on Kale's team for 11 years. Handled logistics, communications, knew every safe house, every contact, every backup plan Kale had built since he was 23. Brennan had also been the one to suggest the first warehouse. Emeka didn't know that yet, but he noticed something else. Halfway through the third search, Brennan called again, and this time the coordinates he provided led them directly away from the industrial district, away from the port, toward the north end of the city. Residential, quiet, the kind of neighborhood nobody looked at twice. Cale slowed the car, stared at his phone. "He's steering us," Emeka said quietly. Cale didn't confirm it, didn't deny it, but he turned the car around, went south, back toward the port. And Emeka, watching the city blur past the window, hands clasped tight in his lap, felt something he hadn't expected. He trusted this man, completely. That realization sat between them, unspoken, taking up space. Then Cale pulled up a map on the center console. One location highlighted, a name next to it that made Emeka's breath stop cold. Brennan Cole, Property Registry, Pier 14 Storage Unit, registered 6 months ago under a shell company. 6 months ago. Long before Rowan ever arrived at that hospital. Cale sat with that information for exactly 90 seconds. Emeka counted. Then Cale picked up his phone and made 3 calls. No names used. Specific, clipped instructions. Coordinates shared. When he hung up the third time, his face had gone completely still. That stillness was worse than anger. 11 years, Emeka said carefully. 11 years, Cale repeated. Nothing else. They didn't go in loud. No convoy. No show of force. Just Cale's car, a side entrance to the pier, and 2 men Cale trusted. Emeka noticed he called them by name, Javion and Deshawn, who materialized from the dark like they'd been waiting. Brennan Cole wasn't the mastermind. That became clear fast. Inside the pier office, papers, burner phones, transaction logs. The picture assembled itself like something ugly climbing out of water. Brennan was a relay point. A very well-paid, very protected relay point. The real architect sat behind a title. Behind a board seat. Behind a charitable foundation that had donated to Aurora Harbor Medical Center 3 years running. Councilman Reeves Fontaine. City Council. Public Safety Committee. Man who'd shaken Cale's hand at 2 fundraisers and looked him in the eye both times. Emeka stared at the name on the documents. He's on the hospital oversight board. He approved the contracts. He had access to Rowan's records from day one. Pause on that. This wasn't one corrupt person. This was a system with a face and a title and a re-election campaign. Then Cale's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Brennan's voice, strained, fast. "He knows you're at the pier. He moved the boy an hour ago. There's a charter flight out of Harlow Airfield. Wheels up in 90 minutes. The call dropped. Cale was already moving. Emeka grabbed his arm. "Do you believe him?" Cale didn't slow down. "Doesn't matter. We can't afford not to. 90 minutes. And somewhere between that pier and that airfield, Rowan Ashford was running out of time. Harlow Airfield had no commercial traffic after 9 p.m. That was the point. A single hangar on the south end. Lights on, side door cracked. 2 vehicles parked at angles that blocked the view from the main road. Cale stopped the car 400 yards out. Dark. Engine off. He turned to Emeka. "You stay back." "No. This isn't a conversation. I know where the evidence is." That stopped everything. Cale turned slowly. "What?" Emeka reached into his chest pocket, pulled out the drawing, unfolded it. In the dim light, he pointed to the bottom corner. Something he hadn't noticed before tonight. Hadn't been looking for it before tonight. A small rectangle. Crayon lines. Colored blue and gray. A locker. And inside the locker, drawn in careful detail that only made sense if you knew what you were looking at. A book. And on the book's spine, for numbers. A combination. Rowan hadn't hidden the evidence. His parents had. And they'd put the location in the one place they knew would always be found. A drawing their son would give to someone he trusted. Emeka's locker. Bay 4, Aurora Harbor Medical Center. Nursing Station C. He'd walked past it every shift for 3 weeks. Cale took the drawing. Studied it. Handed it back. Javion. 1 call. 30 seconds. Get to the hospital. Bay 4, Station C. Whatever's in that locker, extract it. Don't open it. Get it to the federal contact and nobody else. He looked at Emeka. Now we move. What happened in the next 22 minutes was fast and loud and nothing like the movies make it look. Cale's men moved in from 2 sides. Brennan was already inside. Hands raised. Something broken in his expression. Like a man who had finally run out of road. Rowan was in the back of a black SUV. Alive. Scared. Unhurt. Emeka got to him first. Dropped to his knees right there on the airfield concrete. And Rowan grabbed him like someone who had never once stopped believing he'd be found. Then, a single gunshot from inside the hangar. Everyone froze. Cale had gone in alone. 30 seconds of silence that felt like a year. Then, nothing. The door opened. Cale walked out. Steady. Upright. A cut above his left brow bleeding slow and dark, but walking under his own weight. Councilman Reeves Fontaine did not walk out behind him. Federal agents arrived 12 minutes later. They had been waiting, that was the word Cale used later. Waiting. The evidence Javion pulled from Emeka's locker reached the right hands before the airfield went quiet. Transaction records. Shell company registrations. Names. Dates. Wire transfers that connected Fontaine's foundation to trafficking operations across 4 states. The kind of file that doesn't get buried. The kind that ends careers and prison sentences. Within 48 hours, Fontaine was in federal custody. 2 hospital administrators resigned before they could be formally charged. 3 city officials went quiet in ways that told investigators everything they needed to know. The system didn't collapse all at once, but it cracked, and cracks spread. Rowan was placed in protective care. Temporary, pending permanent placement. His caseworker was someone Cale knew personally. Someone trustworthy. Emeka made sure he was on the approved visitor list before he left the building. Months passed. The kind of months that feel like something healing underneath the surface. Slow, not dramatic, but real. One afternoon, Emeka walked into the hospital chapel. Same pew. Same stained glass light falling through in gold and blue. He sat down. Didn't mean to stay long. But the quiet felt different now. Not empty. Full. Footsteps behind him, small, quick ones first. Rowan dropped onto the pew beside him and immediately pulled out a crayon. Then heavier footsteps. Cale sat down on the other side. No sunglasses this time. No security. Just him. They stayed like that, the 3 of them, for a long time. Rowan drew. Emeka watched the light move across the altar. Cale sat with his hands loose in his lap, shoulders down, the permanent tension in his jaw finally, absent. At some point Cale said, quietly, the first day, in here, you were asleep. I know, Emeka said. My brother used to sleep like that, in chairs, anywhere he could. He was always running on nothing. A beat. I sat down because I didn't want to leave someone alone who looked like that. Emeka didn't answer right away. Didn't need to. Rowan held up his new drawing without looking up. 3 figures again. Same as before. Only this time, he'd drawn them holding hands. The chapel was quiet. And for the first time in a long time, quiet felt like something worth staying in. If the story moved you, if it reminded you that real strength shows up quietly, without announcement, and sits beside people in their hardest moments, share it with someone who needs to hear that today. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story on this channel. Every week we bring you stories that inspire, challenge, and remind you what people are truly capable of. Drop a comment below and tell us, who in your life has ever shown up for you in a quiet way that changed everything? Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. And as Emeka and Kale walked out of that chapel together, Rowan between them, Kale's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. His face changed. One word came through the line. A name. A name from 11 years ago. A name that should have been buried with a cold case file and a grave. Kale stopped walking, looked at Emeka, and said nothing, because some things you don't say out loud until you know they're real. The next chapter starts where peace ends. Stay close.